So the 21st man, or coaching, I guess, as some people have called it. It's essentially just raid leading, just from doing it outside the raid. It's a little controversial. I know some people have been thinking like it's not quite like made for the game. Like clearly it's not intended to do this, but it is pretty optimal. We actually weren't the first guild to do it. We're the most popular guild to do it, and we popularized it and made it, I guess, the meta, as people referred to it. But it was actually Encore a long time ago. They had their raid leader. It's an US guild, low hour US guild. They had their raid leader living in the same house as one of their raiders, and they had him just stand behind his monitor. And ironically, that's how we ended up actually doing it as well. Not because anyone else did it, but we were on Zakul. It was a one-tank fight. We sat Darky. I stayed in the fight. We got it to about 10%. And then we're saying, like, why are we doing this? Like, I could simply just have Darky do it and fully focus on raid leading, and then fully focus on playing the game, and then I can get out of the raid and I can fully focus on raid leading. You know, if you guys watch the video about what is raid leading and like how you correctly do it, you guys already know that one of the biggest struggles as a raid leader when you're in the raid is learning how to take however much total mental bandwidth you have, and then you raid lead with whatever's required and you play with whatever you have after that. Well, why do that when you can have your raid leader use his entire mental bandwidth on raid leading and have another player spend his entire bandwidth on playing the game? It's just optimal. But it does have its advantages and disadvantages, especially now that I'm seeing some people potentially doing this in lower ranked guilds. I want to make very clear what goes into this, because it's something that's kind of hard to come back from if you decide you want to do it. So if you want to know the advantages and why we ended up doing it in the first place, I kind of gave you the story on Zakul, but why we continued it and why we didn't do it before was it was pretty hard to recruit tanks. And that'll be a whole nother video topic, 2 video topics actually. Number 1, why recruiting tanks is impossible, and 2, why raid leading from a tank perspective is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. For so many reasons that I'll go into, but it's just getting me into a different perspective, getting me, the guild's raid leader, into a non-tank perspective was the biggest jump in us being where we were in Eternal Palace to winning by multiple days in Nyalotha. It just completely changes your perspective. And that was the main reason we started to do it. So I'd say that's maybe the main advantage. If you're not in a ranged DPS or healer perspective, gaining that perspective on a in the middle of every fight basis is just a massive upgrade from being a melee or a tank. You can obviously handle so much more. Like an example would be this, right? On this video of our Mythic Sludge Fist kill, you see people, sorry about my dog. You're gonna see some people being low, right? And one advantage would be you can cover all this stuff. Look at this UI. You see people's health stones that you're micromanaging. You see their personals, which you're micromanaging. You're able to look at people's like externals that are up. You can do that while being in the raid, but it's just, you're talking about levels of things that you would never do while you were inside, because you'd be, you know, at least you at this, especially for world first stuff, like you had to play at a pretty high level. So like when there's about to be a stomp going off here, you know, a couple people are in danger. Eric is low. FT Bubbler is low, Kingfly is low. I know Kingfly has 2 Hellstones and Dispersion up, right? I'm thinking about this in the moment. FT has 1 Hellstone, no Exil, no Turtle, no Wall. Eric has 0 Hellstones, no Exil, no Turtle, no Wall. In this exact VOD, I called for Dryny to sack FT Bubbler. I call for Nick to PS Eric, because I just know that after this pillar we're on, that's some of the more dangerous areas of the fight, and that's something you can see as a raid leader from outside the raid, and it's I can tell you it's almost impossible to do this while playing at the highest level required to get world first. So just especially when the world first guilds are just trying to get the best advantages that they can, it's just way like that kind of stuff is just so OP. Another thing is less stress. You know, when, like you guys were talking about the mental bandwidth thing earlier, when you're pushing that to its very, very limit, no pun intended, of your raid leading ability here and then your playing ability inside the raid. I remember in BOD and Eternal Palace, there were 2 nights about 6 days into progression, I believe, in both raids, where I got this unbelievably huge headache. And I never get headaches. It's clearly a stress thing. Haven't had it since, and I'm able to do so much more. So it's better, and it's also just good for your mental health. Like, it is so stressful to play really, really well and to raid lead as much as you can, where a lot of people end up just not raid leading very well just so they can play better. But, you know, obviously that's not as good as you can be. And also another advantage would be multiple perspectives. So multiple times, if you guys look at Nyalotha, right? I was able to raid lead both the Psychus phase and the upstairs phase on non-Psychus at the exact same time by having 2 on the same monitor. There is no way you're doing that while playing the game. That is, it's very, very good. Also, one side advantage is I feel like even though our guild has never had an issue with this, it's made sitting people and people getting lower raid time because maybe their class isn't good for a raid. It makes it a lot easier to deal with. It's a lot easier to tell a player in your guild, hey, you might have to sit for a few bosses when you, the person making all decisions, has chosen to sit yourself for every boss. So that's just another small thing that can kind of help. But that's not to say that it doesn't have massive, mind you, disadvantages. In fact, there are fights where it is better to not 21st man and to have your raid leader in them. I'll probably go ahead right with the very first one. So I'll show you guys a little video of our mythic Drestigath. I'll just let it play through here. This is a fight where, as a tank, you had the ability to buff certain mobs that needed to get a damage buff. And also, this was a boss that we killed about 3 times faster than every other guild during this race to world first. Maybe the boss we outplayed the guilds on the most, one that I'm in the raid on. And it's because I could do on the fly stuff. I could mark spots in the room that you'll see later on in this fight where we killed this boss 30% to 0 for the first time seeing it, where other guilds spent 40 plus pulls there. If I was outside the raid, one of the disadvantages of being outside the raid, like 21st man, is if I'm like, everyone's spread out and hitting different stuff here, how do I tell them where to go? And here I marked it. I mark it and I'm buffing things on my own. How do I tell a tank, hey, go buff this, when you're improvising, mind you? This is not a set strat. You're killing this world first. It's completely improvised, sub 30% for our first kill. How do you expect a tank to go to something that, you know, like those 3 things I just buffed there? I'm just like, oh, go buff the tentacle in this thing. Like, no, you haven't seen it enough to make those calls. You can't just tell someone a general direction and expect them to get it. And then also on the fly cooldowns. So putting a marker down on the ground, I'll do it later in the phase where I'm going to say, hey, I'm putting this marker down, do a, I think it's this next entropic crash. I need maybe to Spirit Link on this marker and, you know, rally, for example. And that's something that I feel like we killed this boss. We would have killed this boss slower for sure if I was outside the raid. It's a very rare scenario, but this is a boss where I believe having an inside the raid leader, especially from a tank POV, actually was beneficial to our success. And just small moments like the end of this Sludge Fist. I'll actually play the comms for the last bit of this and listen to what I ask for. Do you have 1 Hellstone? Good. Okay. This is going to be 1 more stomp and then we're charging. 1 more stomp and then we're charging. Where are we charging, Darky? There. Where are we charging, Darky? If you're a raid leader in the raid, you're marking where you're charging and then you're marking a stack point. That's something that I'm having to communicate, and it's kind of like weird. We've seen the fight enough, but like early pulls, you'll wipe to people not being sure of where you're going. I'm lucky to have a bunch of really, really, really good players, and I can just ask one of them to deal with it. But a lot of raid leaders don't have that. So having the ability to do that stuff inside the raid helps a lot. Also, go back and watch my Heroic Denathrius raid leading guide, right? Like, so much of that last phase is carried by how much I'm telling people exactly where to go. But if I was, for example, a 21st or I guess 31st man in that Heroic Denathrius, it would have taken us longer to kill it. Even if there was someone in for me doing way more damage than me, I would not have been able to make as many precise calls. So it's kind of a disadvantage to be outside the raid in a few situations like that. One major way they can fix the disadvantage of the marker situation is to allow like a spectator mode. They already do it in the MDI and AWC broadcast where you can like see the floating POV. They have players in there, like ghost players, that can do that. Man, a dream of mine, and they'll never do this, but best case scenario, they allow a 21st player in the raid to fly around as a spectator, and you can place markers and watch from different points of view. I think it'd be really cool to watch Race to World first too, doing that. So that's obviously a selfish goal maybe, but I feel like it would help the role a lot if it becomes more of a meta thing. And maybe the biggest disadvantage, and why I would not recommend anyone outside of going for World First to do this, is it's a massive sacrifice, and one that a lot of people don't want to make. There's a lot of reasons people play this game. They play it to get loot. It makes sense to have people in your guild that want loot. Character progression in RPGs is natural. To want to get achievements, to like actually raid and get the thrill of killing a boss while inside the raid. For me, what I play the game for is my friends and to get world first. And that's it. And I know for a fact that I'm the best person to do this, and it puts us in the best position to win. And that's literally all I care about. But a lower ranked guild almost certainly doesn't do that. It's the reason we play the game is to win. The reason other people play the game is, I mean, well, obviously we have fun too, but like it's to have fun and do what they want. If you are having your raid leader be like, oh, well, this is like this slightly optimal thing, maybe it'll help us. Like, yeah, if it's for you, there will be people that it's for, but it's not rewarding. It's rewarding to me because we're winning. But, and I'm okay with sitting out. Like I said, I've been in the raid for a long time. I get a lot of the same gratification. I get the exact same gratification from killing it now than before. I've never been more integral to our success now than when I was in the raid. So naturally, that's fine for me. I don't need all the achievements. I've got them all before, you know. It will kill your passion. Have you guys ever played a tank or a healer for farm after you've DPS'd? Do you notice how your drive kind of goes a little lower? Like, you're like, you know, well, I could do more damage this pull, but like my main job's to stay alive and I'm already doing that and that's fine. I can tell you it's happened to me and a bunch of other people in the guild where they end up tanking or healing for a progress tier and it's like for farm. And they're like, man, you know, after progression, I just like kind of don't feel like putting in a lot of work into my characters. Whereas a DPS player, you're constantly playing the game and you're getting every upgrade you can because doing damage is the fun thing you can always strive for. Now imagine you take one of your most integral raid members, being your raid leader, and you relegate him to be outside the raid, and it just kills that for him. It's very possible. I'd say it happens more often than not, where it's just such an extreme measure to go to where it's just really not worth it. For me, I'll continue to do it. I love doing it. But I just think you guys should think very carefully if using any kind of the 21st man is for you. So that's basically it. Like I said before, you really have to weigh this decision if you want to do it. It's hard to go back once you're used to it because your guild will just be so used to most likely you having better raid leading. So I would really take a good account of how much you care about playing the game because there's a good chance it may be the last you like really play your characters and try a lot, which again is why I'd really recommend a lot of people not do it. So if you guys enjoyed the video, let me know, and make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell, and comment if I missed anything or if you'd like any ideas for some new videos. Thanks.